Hello and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Courtney Gooden in Los Angeles is our reader for this morning. Courtney, what's our first question?
Well, the first one comes in from Richmond, Virginia. Michael Boitnott has the question. Hey, panel, I'm still in my search for more cost-effective switchers. I've been in analog way world for some time now and have some ascenders that are 8+ years old. The panel often speaks fondly of Blackmagic design, but my colleagues look down on it. Why the bad rap?
We're going to start with Courtney this morning. Courtney, why does Blackmagic have a bad rep with someone?
You know, the people in the professional world, because it was a low-cost alternative, people kind of looked down their noses at it when it came about because people thought, well, come on, we're used to paying $20,000 for a switcher. How could you possibly get one for $1,500? And when the first ones came out, the first ATEMs came out, I had the Television Studio, which was one of their first ones that was out. And it was fairly limited and it would only do 1080i and it didn't have gen lock on the inputs and it wouldn't, it was very picky about the signals that would come in. And a lot of their video hubs, the early ones, had problems with their B and C connectors would break loose or the input channels would go dead and there was no way you could fix them. So they got a little bit of a bad rep early on, but I think they've improved dramatically over the past few years. And when they came out with the ATEM Mini, they went after a whole new market. It just opened them up to the consumer market, and that's why I guess a lot of people resent them because they're going after the prosumer and the people that are the influencers on YouTube market.
Alex Lindsay.
Sorry, Mickey said that BMD products are generally not the most reliable, are buggy and relatively poor built. They are an option if price point is the biggest factor and risk tolerance is high. This is why BMD is rarely seen to mid to high level productions. You really need to get the gear that you pay for. I will say I've owned a lot of BMD gear. I still own a lot of BMD gear. I probably at one point had about $1.5 million worth of BMD gear. And one of the big advantages that it had was the cost in the sense that for the price of some other switchers, I could have 2 or 3 of those. And so I had backups and the ability to scale much further past it. In fact, I found one of my old ones. This is not where it began. This isn't the original one, but this is the early ones. If you want to go back to archaeology, this is a 2ME. Yeah, 2ME. This is their first 2ME. Didn't have any fans because it had a big old and it was and the thing that Blackmagic brought to this was a lot of imagination. Like no one would have thought of doing this. The problem that they had with these early ones is these were surface-mounted SDI inputs. They don't do this anymore. But these surface-mounted ones meant if you pull on the cable a little too hard, they break and they never come back again. There's no way to fix it. So that kind of stuff. If you didn't know how to take care of your gear, and a lot of people that do rentals and biggest shows, that's not what they want to pay attention to. That was a problem. We used a lot of convenience panels, had very few problems with ATEM switchers in production, not zero, and so, but it allowed us, I will say that at the time that I bought the bulk of it, and even now, it allowed me to do shows like just couldn't afford to do any other way. Clients are, at a certain size, clients are going to need it to be a certain way. Now, equipment's gotten a lot more effective and a lot more robust than it was in the past. I'm not going to say that it's there's a lot of things about it that get into really small issues. Like, for instance, you won't run an SDI cable on a Blackmagic system. Typically, you won't run it over copper more than about 150 to 200 feet, whereas in other systems, you may run it 250, 300 feet. We've learned to stay inside of the 150-foot rule, and we switched to fiber. It's a small change, but it's because there's not the same level of error correction inside of the Blackmagic hardware. So you have to kind of know that we're saving money as a user because they've cut a couple corners that they think aren't as necessary. And really the reality is that 99% of the folks out there don't need those other things. And so, or 90% don't need those other things. And so the issue really comes down to, can you afford the other ones? And I would say, again, as someone who's done thousands of events on Blackmagic, I've seen entire, very, very reliable things break as well. So I've had an entire broadcast truck go down, with a Harris router that was $250,000. So I don't think anything is 100%, and so I'm a little jaded that way. I do think that with Blackmagic hardware, you tend to have to know how to take care of it. I was at somebody's truck the other day, and I looked over it, and their hyperdecks, even though they're new, were in pairs, because anybody that's used hyperdecks for a long time knows you can't stack them all together; they'll overheat. The new ones won't, but the old ones did. So all of us got used to putting them in pairs. So if you understand what you're dealing with and you want to save the money, you could absolutely do incredible shows with Blackmagic. But they're not quite the same as some of the stuff that's more expensive. You're paying for more expensive hardware.
Guy Cochran, your thoughts?
Yeah, when I look at where you're coming from and what you're trying to do, I just got to ask: is the Blackmagic line even going to be powerful enough to do what you want if you're doing like presentation type shows where you have all these inputs and you need fast response? There's not going to be very much delay, so. Analog Way has come out with the Aquilon series, the RS6, and I know that you're saying that you want to save money. People in this world have Barco E2 Spiders. The reason why Blackmagic looks appealing, of course, with the cost is for you could buy 4 or 5 of them of a Constellation 8K for the cost of one of these RS6s. So I see where you could have in some backups, but the real question is why the bad rap? I mean, over the years, just like any volume manufacturer, they've had some hiccups. They pushed the envelope, and some people got burned, and so they just they shy away from it because they don't want to get burned. If you're truly looking in this world and there's no failure option, I mean, I'd also be looking at things from Ross and again at the Barco line.
Hopefully that helps. Oh, Alex wants to come back in on this. Alex?
All I was going to say is if you're in a tier 1 broadcast, most of the time you're seeing Grass Valley, you're seeing, Sony's, you're seeing a lot of other things in the trucks, and there's a lot of other really, really high-end things. But I will say in the corporate world, you see a lot of Blackmagic, at least in the United States. It is a pretty heavy, and the problem is that I talked to a friend of mine who has a lot of different things, and he's got a couple warehouses full of gear, and he bought a bunch of my gear. And he said, you're bidding against people with Blackmagic hardware. And it's, and so when you bid against that, they are, the advantages that they have is, number one is that they own all the gear, and owning the gear is a big deal because most of these other pieces of hardware are built to rent. So I want to rent this gear. Blackmagic is sold to own. And the reason for that's so powerful is you end up with a warehouse full of Blackmagic hardware, and for a week or two, you slowly, at a much lower cost and not paying, you're not doing union hours and everything else, you're putting together the whole kit and making sure that it all works. And then you're putting it into the field. And most corporate events can't afford that, to spend 2 weeks doing a build, on site. So the rental, the people, the rules, all the other things make it really hard. And so what happens is that when you have a Blackmagic system, you arrive at that with that Blackmagic system. It's all built. It looks pretty. It all works. And then you look at the other team that's right next to you that rented all these much more expensive hardware, and all those boxes are coming in and they're cobbling it all together, and it's a brutal experience to do it on site. And your stuff works better not because it's better equipment, but because you had more time. And so I think that's the other thing is that it's very, very hard in the corporate world and I'm talking pretty high end corporate world. I was using Blackmagic hardware to stream keynotes for Fortune 10. So it's as high as in the corporate as you can do, and we're using Blackmagic everywhere, and everyone was. So
this is also a response to the fact the industry has just vastly changed since I was young and in it. And my first cameras, the Sonys and Ikegamis that I worked with, were $50,000 when $50,000 was a lot of money in the 70s and 60s. And now the fact that you can spend $1,500 and get a camera that puts out a picture like we can, it just opens up production to a lot. And there's just a ton more production. We didn't have access to the web and things like that. I mean, you were using those big cameras to get on network television because that was the only game anybody could play. Maybe you had a local station or something like that, but they used the same gear the networks did, and everything was just ridiculously expensive, and individuals could very rarely own it. And that changed over the course of my career, first slowly and then incredibly quickly. And boy, has everything changed now. And now millions of people want to do production where it was probably just thousands or maybe tens of thousands when I was a kid. Alex, you want to come back in?
Yeah, and Michael, who asked the question, just said, will I hit any issues getting multiple inputs at different resolutions and frame rates? And generally, no. Within the realm of video, the Blackmagic hardware has all the new Blackmagic hardware has a Teranex converter. You may lose a little bit of, if you're in an event, the problem you get into is if you start giving it lots of different ones, it's going to lose a frame to a frame and a half as it goes in. And that has if you're doing IMAG, and doing returns, that becomes problematic. So a lot of times we're trying to gen lock and try to do everything we can do, get everything the same format to make sure that there's no delays, because it'll delay everything as it resyncs that if you do that. So you put one thing in that doesn't fit, and it will, everything gets delayed. So that's the thing you have to kind of think through there. John also said it's not going to work for every single venue. I'll probably still have an analog way, and the BMDs can do smaller shows, and that's exactly the way I would look at it. Is for the smaller shows. I mean, we used to send out the little ones, the little 1U ones that would go out for small, like 4-camera shoots that are going to Google Hangouts at the time, but smaller shows as well, and then had much you scale up with what you have there. So I also think that the other thing that has given Blackmagic a little bit of a bad rap is that they move fast and break things, in the sense that, like, we had SDIB. They put out SDIB because SDIA was taking too long to get through SMPTE. And so all their stuff, they were able to move to 1080p 60 faster than everybody else, but it meant that if you didn't switch it back, your satellite truck couldn't see you. And people who didn't know what that was didn't know where to fix it. And so same thing right now with 2110. They're still inside the format, but they've definitely veered a little bit over using the format to their best advantage to make it more accessible. 2110 was never going to become generally accessible without compressing it, and they've figured out how they're going to do it. And so they're a little ahead of everybody else in that respect. And so those are the kind of things that also drive some show engineers a little crazy.
Guy Cochran, you want to weigh back in?
Yeah, if you can, I know you're in the Richmond, Virginia area, get a hold of a local reseller that'll loan you some of this gear and try to walk it through a show. Like locally here, we have the benefit of having multiple 8K constellations in the studio that I'm working with. And the TD does things that hardly anybody else can do because he has 6 of these 32-button Stream Decks. So the BMD ecosystem and others have this companion interface where you can program these buttons to do what you want. So he actually told another TD that using a higher-end system, a RAW, saying, hey, okay, let's race. Let's see what you can do. And the macros that he programmed with the Stream Decks makes it one-button push versus shift and having to do a multi-sequence push. And when you're under duress, having that one button and being calm and cool, and like Alex was saying, of being able to own this stuff beforehand, you have lots of time to train. So we're actually building a shadow cut system so that trainees can walk through the script and actually do the same show alongside, but not in, we're just going to record it and record their hands and let everybody see where mistakes were made and where there's more learning. So that's the other thing to think about is, can you have enough time to rehearse the show over and over and over before going in?
Michael, thank you. Fascinating first question. And this show is driven by your questions entirely. If you'd like to get involved in the process, the best way to do that is to get into our Makana system. It's a Q&A system that drives what we talk about on the show every day. Go to officehours.global/join. You'll get an email that kind of gets you into the system. And once you're in it, you can not just ask your questions, but vote on them, which is very important because we take more time to talk about what's been voted up, as you can see with that first question we dealt with today. That's officehours.global/join. Second question.
All right. Coming in from New York City, David Brady asks, I have an upcoming fundraiser at the House of Worship and looking for a telethon-style ticker thanking donors. I can conceptualize using a Google Sheet for the data, but not sure how to make that available to the stream as an overlay. Any thoughts?
Courtney is going to turn right back around and give us his thoughts. Courtney?
Well, we have questions like this. A lot of times we'll point people to John Barker's site here to record graphics. He makes these graphics that are free download. There's a professional version which you can purchase as well. And they do have a ticker across the bottom. Now, I'm not sure because I haven't used this, what feeds that ticker, whether it's maybe somebody else here on the panel knows that who's used it. But they do have an API, an open API, which you could probably program to program a macro to suck the data off your Google Sheet out of a certain column of donors and maybe the amount that they donated, and throw that into a text file or into a CSV file or whatever H2R Graphics uses for their ticker. And that way the ticker can constantly be updated with your highest donors and the amount that they donated, always feeding that ticker, which is keyed in at the bottom.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, I guess this is coming in live. So it's telethon style, you have live donations. So part of this is understanding what is the device that's taking their donations. So you have to know let us know what that is. And then you have to know what is its API. So there's got to be some way that it's delivering you that content. And we've done ones where we've actually read the text, that it puts up to do that, which is the most painful possible way to do this. But a lot of them will export something out. And so we need to know, is it saving off to a JSON? Is it saving off? What is it saving to so that we can read it? It may have hooks that are already there for you to do that. And then you can start to figure it out. SPX has, as Mickey points out, has some solutions for that, as well as ROS expressions and plugins that can pull data from Google Sheets. But a lot of these donation tools do have APIs and do have hooks that will deliver the data to you so that you can do this because they know that you're going to want to do tickers.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Any announcement about the next office hours T-shirt?
Oh, we've now been in tech for a while. Now we're getting to the important stuff. Alex, what's happening with the office hours T-shirt?
The hat is coming next. I'm having a little trouble with the e-commerce setup. I haven't done it for a while, and I got the page all done. And then the e-commerce hook, I'm stuck. So anyway, I should have that hopefully fixed this week. And my goal is to have by next week, by next Monday, we'll have the hat out. And then, so the hat will come out next. And then we are going to reissue the shirt. The issue was a lot of our international partners, international partners didn't get a hold of it, our producers, because we weren't sure how to ship it. We're just going to ship them from my house this next time, so it's going to be a little easier. We're going to get them all sent to me. We'll have a pizza party. We'll pack them all in little things and send them out. The second thing is that people really love the design because when you can have your shirt kind of open. I don't have it on today. And you get to see a little bit of it. It's a really not. It turned out Nick Justishin, it's all his fault. He did a 3D thing about Unreal Engine, and he had the shirt, he had the logo, he just put it on there, and I got so hooked on that. I was like, oh, that's a really great shirt. And I think everyone didn't, even the people who bought the shirt didn't realize how much they would love the shirt. So we're going to reissue it and give everybody a chance to buy an extra one. I think CJ has already gotten oil on his. And he was like,
it's terrible. I don't even wear mine because I want to preserve my first generation office hours shirt.
Exactly.
I have a little plastic bag and vacuum pack it.
So anyway, we're going to do both of those over the summer. So we're going to get the hat out first, then the shirt. We got stickers too. I'm getting examples for stickers. They're just little ones you can put wherever. So those are coming as well. So we'll keep on putting these out one at a time, and they do help us keep all the lights on too. So thanks so much,
Chester. Thank you so much for the question. Next question.
Next one comes in from Guy Cochran. Could this be it?
It's a Cochran throwing a Cochran.
Oh, no, new wireless shotgun mic. And he posted a link, which I took a look at.
Oh, did you? Amos and Courtney, you had your hand raised, so dive in. Tell us about it.
Well, before I intercepted this Cochran.
He threw it to himself, but Courtney cuts across, grabs the football. He's running
no flags on the play.
Is the quarterback going to get to him?
Atomos, who makes the Ninja recorders, the on-camera monitor/recorders out there has come up with a wireless microphone, a shotgun mic that is USB-C, apparently, that plugs into their USB-C inputs on their recorders, and also has a 2.4 gigahertz wireless feature as well. So I was looking for a picture of it. Maybe, Guy, if you found a picture of it in this announcement, it has a low cut at 75 and 150.
Yeah, here's a picture of it right here. It looks like it's 349. Here's the he fumbles the ball. Cochran steals it back. Goes in with the picture. 349. Shipping July 2025. There, how you like me now?
And the dog comes in on defense. All right. That's awesome. Well, we haven't heard it, obviously. It's brand new. Somebody at some point will probably get one and will be able to listen to what it sounds like, which, after all, with microphones is probably the biggest thing you want to deal with. But looks interesting, and they've been making products for a long time. They have a good reputation at Atomos. Next question.
Next one comes in from David Brady in New York City. It says the Osci-render has updated to version 2 that offers MOV and MP4 support as well as Syphon Spout input. What uses would you find for oscillator art?
I followed this little thread, and it was interesting. This looks like really throwback stuff to the days when, like Visualizer and something that'll take an audio source and turn it into some form of waveform and display it on your screen. All the pieces that I saw looked like it was very throwback, like what I would have seen in graphics from like the 1960s or 70s, but maybe there's something else there. Alex, did you take a look at it?
This is what I love about this show. All I'm going to say is I didn't know that this product existed until David asked the question. And then I looked at it and I was, oops, I got the wrong button. I looked at it and I was like, oh, I must have it. I must have it. So anyway.
Very classic.
Yeah, exactly. So here are some of the effects that it's capable of that are there. Here's the control interface, which looks fairly simple and straightforward. And I'm going to have to download it and play with it. So anyway, thanks for Thanks for the recommendation, David. I don't have any feedback for you yet, but I'm gonna download it and play with it.
I don't own an oscillator, but I play with a toy that looks like one. Courtney Gooden, who has oscillators, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is. And I've used for years. I've used Sonic Visualizer, which does something like this, but as well as doing analysis of sound that would do real-time sound input to something interesting graphic like the filtered Lissajous images that kind of give you a 3D rotating looking type waveform that looks interesting. That's how you could use it. You know, if magic mushrooms come back into popularity, I think it's going to really pick up for this. I don't know what MOV and MP4 support means. Does it output MOV and MP4 for recording, or does it import? Will it import a video file and incorporate it into its visualization? I don't know how that works, Alex.
Max used to have a program called Visualizer. You made me miss it. I'm going to have to go back and find a copy of the old Visualizer. Alex, you have something else?
David Brady said it renders out in an oscillator emulator. So it's funny. It says name your price. It's like, you know, like you can name a price. It's like how much would you pay for it? Literally, it's how much would you pay for it? But it does suggest for premium that it's £15, and so I'm going to send them £15. It's £15 today. Turns out to be $20.31. So we'll give it a shot.
Have fun. Next question.
Comes in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. How do you compare the new Sony GP-VPT3 grip and detachable remote with the old GP-VPT2BT, the SmallRig SR-RG1, and the ULANZI MT-08, and the laughable JOBY GorillaPod?
No question is too specific for office hours. I don't know if there's a human being in the world that has every single one of these products, but Alex is going to try to give us his ideas.
Well, I think it all depends on what you're trying to do. So the Sony multifunction is really designed so that you can control your Sonys with it. So it's not really this is what it looks like here. So this is the Sony Bluetooth. So it's going to talk to a variety of the Sony cameras. Obviously these are very focused on providing support for creators to have a basic control over what they're doing there. I'm actually kind of interested in it in the sense that I I wonder whether I could just use that and have it like sitting on my desk and I could control my FX30. So I haven't even seen the Sony. This show is very expensive for me. Anyway, but I think that, you have to decide what with these, I'm not sure what the other ones all are. The JOBY GorillaPod I'm very familiar with. I just found like 4 of them in my two of them still in a box I've been cleaning my garage, and you open up boxes and you go through stuff, and I'm like, I didn't even take these Jobys out. I think I bought a bunch of them for a show and we just didn't use them all. The problem with the Jobys is that you're not going to use that over and over and over again. They're a good quick fix that you have in your thing. Like I got to attach a little GoPro to something and I hook it up. I think they show it with bigger cameras, but I've never seen anyone successfully use it with the larger cameras. They make really thick ones. So, a lot of these, it just depends. They don't look like what you're asking us to compare is. They're all different. They all do different things. And so I'm not sure how we would, it's not an apples to apples comparison.
They look weird. That's my only problem. I've seen people use small camcorders with those GorillaPods, and they're a weird little leggy thing.
I use them for
around.
time lapses a lot because I'll be somewhere, and I remember I was in Japan for a production, and I love to take time lapses of people setting up the sets, right? And so I would go find a pole or a tree or something, and I'd hang my little camera from it, and I could just
I think
anything
really
I could
for
find, I could just kind of adjust to whatever there was. I didn't have to figure out the clamping, and so that was useful. They are useful, and I usually, if I'm doing kind of a long-term trip, I have a Joby laying around somewhere, but I don't. It's not like I use it in production. The ones I will say, the Jobys with the little magnets on the end, are very useful because they just snap, snap, snap. But really, it has to be a very light camera.
Next question.
Next one comes in via QR code from Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana. Ubuntu Studio stable enough for small stage or stay away?
Alex, what's your thought?
Again, we keep on getting all these questions of things we've never seen before. It's a Tuesday. So this is Ubuntu Studio, and I'm not as familiar with it. So it has it has some graphic designs. I don't know. It's a really interesting. Someone's put together something that is you can. I guess I don't know what the cost
That's a Linux build, right? So is it just code for Linux?
Kind of a Linux. It's a Linux-based studio that gives you some control over audio. Here's the thing I'll say is that
I think it's all open source
for the most part. When people put these studios together, it's for people who have more time than money. So there's it's fiddly. There's a lot of tools. Generally, there's a lot of tools that will do all these things better than what it does, but it's free and it's on Linux. So there's a certain group of people that will love that. The people who are actually trying to just get stuff done and are on a clock may not be as excited about using it immediately. So.
Courtney, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I was just saying it looks like it's open source, and they are updating it being open source and in the Linux platform. They do have a lot of, you can see March, what is it, 2025? Yeah. So they're updating April, like once a month or something. So it is changing all the time, which may, be problematic for its stability. Plus they had a code name Plucky Puffin. What is that?
Builds of Linux have some of the weirdest names. I love that about that whole community.
When vibe.
Yeah. Anyway, next question.
Next one comes in from David Brady in New York City. A handy glossary of virtual production terms by the American Society of Cinematographers, Epic Games, and Netflix, to name a few. Should office hours work on something similar that we can use as a reference? Perhaps
I took a look at this, and the names ahead of it, those American Society of Cinematographers, you don't get much better than that in terms of people who are professionals in the things in Epic and Netflix, obviously. Alex, what's your thought about this?
Here's the problem with building glossaries is that no matter how in-depth you make them, people complain that you didn't put this other thing in. And it becomes kind of this constant, if we had a team of 4 or 5 people that want to manage it, come to me and we'll make one. This is how office hours gets built, is that someone says, we should do this. And I say, yeah, you should. So that's, I'm open to building a glossary somewhere on our website that had it there. What I would say is that there's a lot of glossaries out there right now. ChatGPT generally crushes every glossary that I work with because I can sit there and have a conversation with it about a subject matter. It's usually using that glossary as a source. But it's usually adding more to it. I'm not sure glossaries make as much sense in the world of AI as they did in the past, because the level of detail that I get out of ChatGPT on a daily basis for this kind of thing is so much more than a glossary. I'm not sure. And I can keep on interacting with it to ask more questions, and it's giving me references. I can go check on its work. I mean, it's not like it doesn't hallucinate very much for me, at least. And so it does. I mean, it makes up products every once in a while. So, but my understanding of things is I just don't know if people would use it. I think that's the problem. I think it'd be a limited number of people that would actually utilize it.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Alex. I've been, using Wikipedia for years to find out an acronym pops up in something. I go, what the heck is that? Or drug name, and what is that used for? And it usually takes me to Wikipedia. The nice thing about this, the way they've organized it, is they've divided it into categories. So if you're going to go into one of these fields, it'd be nice to just go, okay, I'm going to do, cinematography or directing or performance capture, editing, producing, production design. So if you want to know all the keywords in that glossary that are going to be thrown at you in any of those particular jobs, it's good to pare down the wonderful world of acronyms to just those that are pertinent to the field that you're going into. So it could help refine or focus your attention in learning the words and phrases used in a particular job classification. So it's handy for that. But as well, if I just want to know I heard something and I want to find out what it means, I'd dive into Perplexity or ChatGPT and just type in, what is this?
Looks like this actually has a little virtual thing, and I got to another part of it that says, just have a question, type it in. And so that's going to go through the virtual production glossary and get into the various topics that they have. So it looks like they're designing it at least for kind of the new era. Maybe they're planning on being one of the repositories that those large language models and virtual lookup things are sourcing. So who knows? We'll see, but thank you for the question. Next question.
Next one comes in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Roscoe asks, are there productions where both local hardware switching and online software switching is done? Is it usually done in parallel, or could the online act as a backup to hardware?
Guy Cochran's going to start us off here. Guy?
Yeah, it really depends on where the event's taking place. Is it at like a convention center ballroom where you have to do what we call ground to cloud, where you actually have to send the video feeds somewhere from the venue? If that's the case, then you have a couple options. But the best thing to do is to map it all out with an engineer so that when, or if, I should say, there is a failure, you can switch over gracefully and it doesn't impact the viewing experience very much. We had this happen with I was on a production with Grant, and I was shadow cutting in the cloud, and he had a power outage at his studio, and he had all BMD hardware, big panel. Lots of people were in this Zoom where we're monitoring together. And then I just watched everybody go away. So all the people that were in the Zoom meeting, all the multi-viewers, everything just was gone. And then I just hear over comms, we lost power, and it's going to take us a few seconds to get the generator up. And I just hit a button because I was just shadow cutting in vMix, and I was able to take over the show and push my feed in. So in that case, we had mapped out what to do in case of a failure, and we had our playouts already loaded on my machine so that when the queue was there set to do the playout, I could just hit my button and it would push the feed in. So again, it comes down to proper engineering and looking at things like this nice diagram here on AWS, running vMix on AWS. You can see here in this example where they have the feeds coming up through SRT. They got their primary vision switcher as vMix 1, and then they got a backup switcher. And so just being able to look at something like this, and you can see that name of that YouTube video is running vMix on AWS. If you could find that and look up that diagram. But it's all about engineering. It's all about where do the feeds need to come from? Where do they need to go? What do we do when things do fail? And how do we gracefully fail over? But I've seen people who want to do training, and that's what I love about this community. I would love to have a global TD pool of people that I can just, and we're doing it. I mean, we've got, vector training on extra hours. So if you're interested in this stuff, jump in there and at least watch behind the scenes as to how we're pulling the feeds in and how we're pulling them back out, and then how we're switching between the MEs, because that's the thing, is some of this stuff is so expensive and so powerful that we just can't get our hands on it. Like to get a constellation, it's $12,000, and to have your backup constellation, you're in at $24,000. Whereas we're running Vector for, and it's basically a TriCaster. You could get the TriCaster software for about $100 a month. So between an EC2 instance running at $1.60 an hour with the TriCaster software, that's not very much money compared to the $24,000 that you would spend on hardware. So getting trained up though, and then mapping it out and being around people that show you these ropes, that show you how things fail and where the failure point is and what you can do to build in these contingency plans, it's huge. I mean, I love this community. I'll show you guys something later that I've been working on to push multiple feeds in so that you guys can do this yourselves and get some more training, because I think we need this. I think it's needed in this community, is to have people remotely, in case somebody gets sick or hit by a lottery ticket, whatever you want to say, you have a backup TD that could still run the show, follow a script, and knows, hey, this is how it works. This is how a super source pops in. This is the templates. This is where the graphics are. This is where the playouts are. These are the buttons that you push. And it's muscle memory at that point. So I'm looking forward to what we can do here in office hours.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, for a lot of the productions I work on, we don't really put the core event into the cloud because we're doing 4K 60 and bandwidth-wise, and it has to be really, really high quality. It tends to have to not be compressed very much as it goes through, or only compressed once. And as a result, we don't really we do our productions on site, but that's one of the variables that you have to think about, is how many signals do you have, and what a resolution and everything else. I would say that I would not do 4K production generally in software. Like it's where you start adding you start adding 8 sources and a bunch of other things, and I don't have a ton of confidence that I can do 4K without losing some frames. And people say, "Oh, it looks pretty good," but man, I'm very sensitive to frame loss. And so I think that's, kind of where we lean into it. What we do almost every show is that it either goes to a remote site or to the cloud, where it's kind of what Guy was talking about a little bit. We're not cutting the whole show, but we are seeing the feed and we're able to add things to it, like a "we'll be right back" that's somewhere not on the site. So if the site has a transmission issue, we can cut over or make adjustments to it.
If you want to get your questions into the show, the quickest and easiest way to do this is to use the QR code that I just popped up on the screen, or you can actually type that in. AskOfficeHours.global is the link. Type that into any web browser. That'll take you into the Q&A system, and it's pretty quick. You can literally do that from your car or whatever if you have a question that comes up, and we love your questions. The ones that go into this system stay persistent in our system, so even if you don't get a chance to watch right then, you can go back and kind of reference things. So that's AskOfficeHours.global. Next question.
Next one comes in from St. Louis, Missouri, and Aaron Cothy asks, what entry-level digital audio mixer should I install in a largely student-run high school theater that is currently all analog? Behringer Wing, Allen and Heath SQ6. Are there any theater-specific console features?
Alex Lindsay is going to help you out here. Alex?
I don't think that there's I think that it depends on how many inputs you need. So the first thing you have to look at is A, what's your budget? And B, how many inputs and outputs do you need for the show? So that I would say that's the first thing that I would look at. Mickey suggested the Yamaha DM3 or the Allen Heath SQ6. And so which I think are great solutions. I think you probably are going to lean towards the Allen and Heath from a cost perspective for cost per channel. So I think cost per channel, you're probably going to find the Allen Heaths are better as far as quality goes. I do think that if you're looking for a lot more, and I know Mickey said not to don't train people on poor quality sound. The preamps and the wings aren't as good, but I will say that neither are. Like I'm working with a high school right now that has a pretty nice performing arts center, but I mean there's so much going on that it's not like it's pristine audio anywhere, to make that all work. So I think that wing could be a potential there where you're going to get a lot of channels. I think that the problem that we run into with the performing arts center that I'm working with right now is channel count. Like it's just that they have a lot of channels of a lot of things, and you start dancing around how many channels you have available to you. So I think that would be the thing that I would be most concerned about, is what is the maximum number of channels you think you're going to need for a play, like, a play or a large choir. So they oftentimes need quite a few for that kind of thing. So those are the things that you want to kind of keep in mind as you're starting to figure out how many channels. So figure out whatever that channel is and then increase it by at least 50 to 100%. And that's how many channels you need.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, getting enough channels. And, stepping into the digital world, it's a whole different interface type that you're going to have to train. But, it's good for students to learn what's out there in the world right now. So I guess it would be good as a learning experience for the students. One thing you have to deal with is, try and maybe find a rack mount, like a X32 Behringer, so that you have a control surface that interfaces. So when they spill their drinks on the control surface, you're not going to take your whole mixer out. You'll still have access from the software to the rack mount stuff, and it's hard to spill your drink into the rack mount equipment. So think about how long it's going to hold up. And also sometimes, it's been a long time since I was in high school, as you can probably tell. But we occasionally would put on plays which actually had the band department put together a little orchestra in the orchestra pit. So if you're going to have to mic those people or some instruments in the orchestra, you might, like Alex said, make sure that you have enough inputs to handle something like that may come along in addition to wireless mics of performers on the stage and wired mics as well.
Next question.
Okay, Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. As a follow-up to the Blackmagic corporate discussion, are you using Blackmagic for encoding and streaming as well, or primarily for camera switching?
Alex.
I think Blackmagic's interface for streaming is amazing. Probably one of the better ones to at least the prettiest one to look at, but I don't use it at all for encoding. I think that they have some issues, the same issues we see with the quote unquote Black Crush we see in the encode. And so that's problematic. The other thing is just I don't feel like the quality of their encode is very, very high or very stable. So I don't use those for that. Typically, we're using on this show right now, we're using Videon encoders. We also, when I'm working for work, I'm using both Videon encoders as well as Elementals, big hardware encoders as opposed to smaller encoders. But I'm always using some version of an encoder, a hardware encoder that's dedicated to that process, dedicated to that mission. I want somebody else managing it. I want someone else looking at it. I want it to be a piece of hardware. I generally don't. I'm working on the idea of building something that turns a Mac Mini into an encoder, because the Mac Mini is plenty powerful enough to do everything we want, but haven't quite got it to a point where it's working yet.
Next question.
Comes in all the way from Cape Town, South Africa. Kenzo asks, hi, Office Hours fam. Weird issue with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. Footage seems to record in slow motion and has to be sped up in post to match audio. Anyone know what this could be?
Alex is going to help you out here. Alex.
Unfortunately, I know exactly what this is because I shot a whole show this way one time. And so what you did is there is a high frame rate setting in the second page of your record page. I don't think I can show it to you from the camera, but it's on the second page. There's a high frame rate and there's some frame rate there. You probably had it set to twice what your regular frame rate is or some fraction of it or whatever, so that you can shoot slow motion. You can shoot 48 or 50 or 60 or whatever you want. You can have that set there. And then the problem is that you end up with the convenience buttons at the top, and they're and Mickey said off speed. It's off speed, but it's usually used for high frame rate. But there's an off speed, and you can get that on one of the convenience buttons on the top of the Blackmagic Cinema camera. You can also have it on the side of a 12K, which is where I had it. And you're reaching over to do something, get false color or something like that, and you hit it, and now you're in. It doesn't show anything different while you're playing it back. Maybe there's some little icon that I missed, but it's recording it all at that off speed frame rate, and then you have to correct it later, and it can be corrected. I was capable of correcting it, but I did capture about an hour of footage at the wrong speed. So anyway, so that's what it most likely is that you had it mapped to one of those buttons and you accidentally hit it, and now it's in off speed. And if you turn it off, and the other thing that I do now is I set the off speed to the same, unless I'm going to do something off speed, I set it to the same frame rate that my regular speed is, so I don't have to. There's no chance that I could go the wrong way.
Kenzo, I did a thing when I got one of my cameras years ago that really helped me, and I don't know why I did. I was working in a lot of dark theaters, and I always had a little light in my mouth, and it was uncomfortable. So one day I sat down with my camera, and I literally kept my eyes closed, and I kept thinking, okay, I want to change this menu. And I would just tactily say, okay, if I go to the left edge and come to the first button, then go to the second button and hit it twice, I should be in that memory. I did that for an hour and a half, just sitting there tactily making sure I knew where in my brain every button was. Boy, did that turn out to be useful for exactly the reason that Alice just articulated. I'm searching for a button somewhere, and I think I've got it, and I hit it, and I put myself into a mode that I do not want to be in. So I really kind of schooled myself to get out of that thought process. It was really worthwhile. Alex?
And anybody who's ever owned a GoPro camera knows exactly what he's talking about. You just get up, over. And it's like playing a game. It's like playing a game where you remember all the patterns, and you sit there and go, and you get really fast at it.
It's like playing Space Invaders. But I got to get over here and I got to go up there.
I got to go over here. Like, because I used to have, we used to have these ones. We had 6 GoPros in a, for a spherical capture, and so you'd be setting all the settings, and at first it's just hell, and then after a while you can be sitting there talking to someone about sports but you're not even looking at the interface anymore. You're just hitting the patterns, and it all just lines up.
That's why rental equipment is always tougher for me than the ones that I own, because if you own it, you can go through these little mental processes and really learn your device so that you don't have to think about it. You just know where to find what you need to find. But anyway, Kenzo, thank you for the question. Next question.
Next one comes in from Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota. It says, I finally got MixFX, and what a beast of an app. I'm just getting started. What tips and tricks can you share for a newbie?
Guy Cochran's going to start us off here. Guy?
Well, it depends on which ATEM you have as to what the benefits really are of the MixFX app. The biggest for a lot of us that we're having to do this with the little buttons inside of the ATEM software control is with SuperSource, you can move things around, and then there's the animations. So if we look here, we can see the addition, the superpower is really adding bit focus companion. So I have companion running on here, and here's MixFX over here. So once you get the connection going, and you can add these different buttons. So all the different buttons that are available, like SuperSource. This is the power here, is the SuperSource presets. So these are all ones that are pre-made, and once you get them dialed in, you could just drag and drop them on a button. And then when you go to look at your web buttons, you now have that button. And so when you push that button, you could notice that things are flying around. And so these are all pre-made. These would have been so difficult to do on your own, but that's one superpower. The other thing is all these macros. So you could put all these on an iPad. You could have all your macros all set up. And then there's also the ability to switch between your SuperSource boxes. So here's like box 1. If you wanted to put a different person in there, you could make you could do this with an iPad, or you could do this with Companion. But it's nice to be able to populate these buttons, these boxes based on these buttons here, instead of having to do it in the ATEM software control, which just seems a lot more kludgy. But good luck with it and have fun.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, the main thing is to spend all your time really in the SuperSource. That's the thing that just turns your ATEM into a completely different. You can definitely do other things with it, and we have, but the primary thing that most of us do is get really good at the SuperSource animations. Now you can do, I've done some pretty big shows where I did a show for like 60,000 viewers, and there was 4 buttons across MixFX, and I'm just pushing the 4 buttons, and it's just a transition between these SuperSources, and people loved it. But it felt very absurd, because I had a full 2ME panel sitting in front of me, and I had this little iPad to the side, and I'm just tapping little buttons here, and that was the whole show. So anyway, it's good. It's an incredible app. If you're watching this, and you have a Blackmagic switcher, you should just consider MixFX Pro to be one of the things that you buy with your switcher. It's just $50. Just consider your switcher $50 more and just buy it. It transforms how your switcher works.
Hey, if you find value in what we do here, there are a couple of ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's easy and cost-free. In fact, most of these are. Volunteer at officehours.global. That, again, doesn't cost you anything, but it's great to meet the people who are on this team, and you will learn a lot. Believe me, I have increased my knowledge of so many things so much just by hanging out with Office Hours folks. Or you can donate if you'd like to. officehours.global/donate. We are 501c3. Next question.
Another question in from Michael Boydnott in Richmond, Virginia. A follow-up to my analog weight question about switchers. Any thoughts on PixelHue?
Nobody seems to have raised a hand about this, so I don't really understand this. I've never used it. It may just be that you caught us on a time when nobody is really familiar with it. Alex raised a late hand here. Alex, do you know something about it?
Yeah, this is they have a simple goal. We know what their goal is: designing products that push the envelope of what technology can do. That's what we know so far. So they have a presentation switcher. So this is hardware. Again, these are not, for many of us, not stuff that we have seen before. So anyway, so we're going to have to do more research on it. It seems to be this is a day of asking about lots of products that we haven't seen before. Which is good. It's good for us.
Yeah, but Michael, thank you for putting it on our radar. We can't, we can't, if we're not aware of something, we can't look it up and get our smart people to analyze it.
Yeah, and there's an interesting thing where there's this crossover of what a lot of people do, but that in the event world, there's oftentimes these kind of verticals that people get into these other things that it's a thriving product, like Ventus. If you're doing events in Europe, we see Ventus all the time. In the United States, never see it. We don't even know it exists. And it's a really powerful mapping software. It's kind of a little bit like Resolume Arena kind of thing. But those are the kind of things where it just really depends on the culture that's kind of built around the tools as well.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Jeff Simmons in St. Louis, Missouri. Trying to use Vectorworks for a control room build for some old blueprints. Or from some old blueprints. They seem a bit off with the math and dimensions, and I'm not an architect, and assuming it is inaccurate and I'm not missing something, is there a strategy for handling these?
Alex?
Well, the question is do you have access to the actual space? So sometimes, and the question also is that are they all off, or are they different dimensions off? Especially when you're looking at old blueprints, there's a couple of issues. One is that those blueprints may not be as built, so they were drawn. But nowadays, a lot of times we're rebuilding drawings, we're rebuilding layouts and everything else from the measurements of what actually happened, so that we have a version that is a virtual version that really matches down to the centimeter or millimeter of what actually was built. But that's oftentimes, and we're using LiDAR and lots of other things to make sure that we are accurate about the way the drawings look. But this is not what happened a long time ago. These blueprints are, rough approximations. I had a blueprint the other day that we looked at that we had one location we had to connect to into the other one. On the blueprint, they look like they're on the same floor. They are not. They're not on the same floor. So anyway, there's a lot of things about these blueprints that have been reproduced. You lose the key, you lose the elevations, you lose a lot of other things, and so you have to kind of figure out what your point of truth is. So getting to a single point of truth oftentimes means going and doing some measurements at the actual location if you have access to those, to figure out, okay, this is what the offset is of what's actually happening. The other thing is building kind of a circular solution, which is that if I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this, they all come back to the same place. And if they don't, then I have that's a bigger problem, because that means that the dimensions are not they're not different across the entire piece. There are only certain ones that are inaccurate. So that's where you have to kind of tighten it up. But it also depends on how accurate you have to be. But if you have the access to the space, then that's there. If you're trying to build something from something that doesn't exist anymore, that can be more complicated. You're just going to have to figure. There's not a lot of ways to be perfectly accurate to it. If you're using Vectorworks, I'm assuming you're trying to integrate. Typically, if you're using Vectorworks, you're trying to integrate into an existing structure. So getting to that existing structure and getting some measurements will make a huge difference.
Courtney?
Yeah, and be careful, because a lot of times the blueprints don't include wall treatments, things like that, things that are put on the surface of the walls. They may be inside wall to inside wall, or they may be center wall to center wall. The dimensions depends on who drew them up and how long ago they were drawn up. Measure twice, cut once.
I was working with a master carpenter once who was doing a build out, and I said, but the blueprints don't say that. And he said, blueprints? I got to build it in the real world.
Right. And a lot of it also, one thing that Jeff said there that was that he doesn't have a lot of access to the space. The thing that I request pretty often is, hey, is it okay if we come in and scan it? Now, I happen to have a scanner, but you can have a service come in and just scan it. And what happens is that takes all the measurements very quickly. Like, so you give me an hour in a space, and I can someone with an hour in a space can do 6 to 8 scans, overlap them all, deliver it back to you the next day, and now you can measure everything forever. And so it's about $2,500 to $3,000 is what it's going to cost you in most parts of the United States to have a single space scanned out. And they're going to do it with better scanners than, if you pay that kind of money, they're going to do it with better scanners than I have. And they're very accurate. These Leica, the bigger versions of the Leicas that are there, or a variety of other, Trimble makes a bunch of them that we use as well. So look at that too, because having a LiDAR scan, it just saves so much time. It's how you're not sitting there trying to measure things and try to figure out. You'll get like 3 or 4 measurements to figure things out. You get a LiDAR scan, you have them all. And now you can go from there.
Next question.
All right, double click. Next one comes in from Peter Rosado in Las Vegas, Nevada. Are there plans to cover CineGear at Universal Studios in June?
Oh, we've always had fun there. Alex, what do you think?
There is an outside chance that I may go on Saturday to CineGear. I don't think we're going to try to cover it. If I go, I have to admit, I really thought about it after the last time we talked about this question, and I really just want to enjoy it. I just want to just go and walk around. Production outside is not something that I particularly enjoy, as I said in one of the other meetings that we were in. And I just decided that if I'm going to go, I'm just going to go and walk around, take pictures.
Guy Cochran?
If some of you guys caught the after hours discussions during NAB with our friend Omar, he's reached out and said that he's willing to do that. So if you guys want to tune in, I will follow up with him, and we can at least get 30 or so of us in after hours and wandering the booths. But he is game with his little SRT. So basically, he's asked me to intercept the SRT feed from the ground and then push it into after hours so that he could do his wandering and just worry about being on the ground and not worry about the cloud stuff. But I'm willing to push the feed into after hours from the SRT feed, because he has like 3 modems inside of his I think it's a Raspberry Pi or something like that.
Well, let's
his backpack.
Let's make sure that we know when he's going to do that, and we'll make sure that everybody knows.
Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday.
Figure out how to assist if possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Next question.
Next one comes in from James Babbitt in San Diego. Please discuss OpenAI's recently paying $6.5 billion for Jony Ive's device startup, maybe a new lower-priced AI phone?
What I read, he said it was not going to be a phone, but that's interesting. Courtney, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to want to jump in and compete with Apple in the phone market anytime soon. I'm hoping it's not a handheld AI device like the Rabbit was and tried to copy, which was a miserable failure. But you can be assured that if Jony Ive is designing it, it'll look sleek and it'll have no holes in it.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, the rumor is it's some kind of like necklace kind of thing or some kind of little clip that's been tried before, but it hasn't been tried by Ive and OpenAI and with more scale. So it could be something that's constantly seeing and hearing what you're doing, and then you're just asking it questions that are contextual. I think that's the rumor. The other rumor is that one of the reasons they paid so much for it is because it dilutes the nonprofit partner inside of OpenAI and makes it easier for them to regain more control. So they weren't price conscious because it had some other advantages to it. Whether it actually does what it needs to do, it'll be interesting to see.
I'm holding out for a single ear diamond stud earring with a neural connection to your brain directly.
I think that what's interesting is that we may end up with a situation where Jony Ive is competing against Apple, because I think that there's rumors that Apple's going to put out headset or earpieces with cameras, which would allow them basically to do all those things as well.
Yeah. Next question.
Year Siri. Tommy Schatz in St. Paul, Minnesota says, is anyone on the panel expanding their SDI gear, or are your next purchases going to NDI or other CAT solutions.
Alex, what's your thought?
That means Cat solution, Cat 5 solution, Cat 6, Cat 8, whatever. I am still buying SDI gear. Like it's still, for the shows that we do, we look at it, we try to figure out better ways to do it right now, but we're still doing SDI. The NDI solutions probably aren't, again, for what we need, we can't compress a lot of the stuff that I'm doing very much, and so it becomes difficult, and it's not something I want to try to explain to the clients that I have about why things are working or not working. We are experimenting heavily with, we've gotten test units and we've experimented heavily with the 2110 solutions from Blackmagic, and so far they have been flawless. Like we can't break them. Like if we sit inside the spec that they give us, we've been having a great opportunity to play with them. I haven't deployed them into work yet, but I'm very close given the experience that we've had so far.
Thanks so much to all of you for being here today, the producers who asked the questions, and it generated our discussion. We really can't do this show without you. To our panelists who come and freely offer their expertise every single day for now thousands of days. To the back-end crew, an amazingly talented group of unsung heroes. You'll see some of their names on the credit. It rolls here in a minute. Thank you, and thank you to everyone. Our Tlaloc traversal today, our Tlaloc traversal, boy, I don't know why that's hard to say after this many words, 26,000 miles. That's how far you would have had to travel to get to the people who gave you their expertise freely today. That's 42,000 kilometers, 205 million bananas for scale. Thanks for being here. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, I was all ready with my cat solutions, the Calico, or maybe the Tabby, or maybe the...
I'd like to use the Tabby. I'd like to use Tabby Transport.
It's not as good as those Ubuntu names.
Yeah, I mean,
Flaming Gorilla.
Back in the 90s, a lot of people used the Tabby, but the Calico really has, I think, taken over the industry.
There's always a link if you really want to go for a big,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Lots of transport.
All right. See you later, guys.
It's fat Persian for me every time.
The Siamese translator.